I want to start this video with a quick question. What do you believe to be the richest business company to have ever existed in history?
Do you think it's any of these companies?
Believe it or not, it's none of those companies. It's actually the East India Company, which in today's money would have been worth the equivalent to around £6 trillion when it was at the height of its power. In today's lesson, we're going to look at the 16 marker, and we're going to be looking at one of the factors that you're going to bring into that, the role of individuals. We're going to look at two particular individuals that helped Britain to colonise an entire subcontinent. Some of you may be familiar with the 16 marker and call it maybe the 20 marker. That's because it carries 4 extra marks for spelling, punctuation and grammar.
So let's have a look at the 16 marker in question today. So, has economic resources been the main factor in the development of the British Empire? Explain your answer with reference to economic resources and other factors. Use a range of examples from across your study of migration, empires and the people, circa 790 to the present day. And this is worth 16 marks, plus any spelling, punctuation and grammar.
As you can see, the role of individuals is not the factor that is included in the question, it's economic resources. You will need to discuss, analyse and evaluate economic resources, but we're just honing in on a small part of the question. The role of individuals is a factor that you can bring in to analyse and evaluate and argue against economic resources. Therefore, providing a balanced answer and really examining all the evidence available.
So, what do we remember about Robert Clive? Well, he was born in Shropshire to a wealthy family and moved to India aged 18 to work as an office clerk for the East India Company. He joined the company's army and quickly proved to be a great leader. Best known for his victory at the Battle of Plassey in June 1757, victory enabled the company to progress further across India. Returning to England, he was elected to Parliament in 1761 and given Irish barony. In 1763, he returned to India as governor and commander-in-chief of the East India Company's army. So looking at Warren Hastings, he was the first Governor-General of India from 1773 to 1785. He was best known as a reformer. He reorganised tax systems, tightened anti-corruption laws, wiped out thieving gangs who were running wild in the countryside. He tried to preserve Indian existing traditions and systems too. Despite ending his career in a controversial way, Hastings was falsely accused of high crimes and misdemeanours by his political enemies. He is regarded as one of the key figures in establishing India as part of the British Empire.
So Britain would go on to build an empire and have India as its jewel in the crown. But Britain wasn't the only European power to have presence in India.
Now, the Portuguese were the first Europeans to make it to India in 1497. They were quickly followed by the French, the Dutch, the Danish, and then the British. The Spanish at this point were preoccupied in the Americas. At first, they just wanted to trade at ports, swapping European products such as guns and shoes with Indian goods like silk, spices, and tea. This was hugely successful, and they set up permanent trading stations. Trading stations were large warehouses surrounded by big walls and were heavily guarded. Goods were stored in these warehouses, which was usually where the trading took place. Often the warehouses included workshops or factories to turn raw materials such as cotton into products, such as clothes, in order to sell back to the Indians. More shamefully, the British later set up opium farms, which was basically heroin, and forced China to buy this opium against their wishes.
So how did the richest and most powerful business company ever to exist come into being?
The East India Company was set up by Queen Elizabeth I in 1600. It consisted of several trading stations in India which enabled British merchants to trade with Indian locals. This proved to be economically profitable for Britain, as it also gave traders access to trade with countries in the Far East, notably China and Japan. Traders brought back fine china, silk, coffee and spices back to Britain. The East India Company grew as people invested in more ships to travel to India and the Far East. It soon had a bigger fleet than most countries. This made more people invest in the company, which kept making it grow. The East India Company was used to colonise India in the early 1600s. It started to take over huge sections of India, either by making deals with Indian regional rulers or by using force. They set up fortresses throughout India, which were like castles. They even had their own army, which was twice as big as the British army.
Now, before the Europeans arrived, India was run by another empire.
The Muslim Mughal Empire had ruled most of India since about 1500, but had been growing weaker. The East India Company came into conflict with the Mughals in a battle over who would control India. At the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the East India Company, led by a man called Robert Clive, defeated the Mughals. The East India Company now effectively controlled India.
Many still wonder how a small island like Britain, just situated off the northwest coast of mainland Europe, managed to colonise and rule an entire subcontinent like India. Well, as you can imagine, it didn't come easy, and there were many wars and battles and conflicts along the way. The Battle of Plassey in 1757, for example, was an early demonstration of the kind of tactics that British leaders would use when controlling the empire.
With their organisation, discipline and modern weapons, 3,000 company soldiers had been able to beat an Indian army of 40,000 at Plassey. About 2,200 of the 3,000 East India Company soldiers at Plassey were actually Indians who were paid well and rewarded for their help. Often they were Indian Hindus keen to kick the Muslim Mughals out of India. Clive's divide and rule tactics of dividing the natives up against each other would be something the British would do again and again over the years in various other countries. Victory at Plassey opened the door for the East India Company to complete their conquest of India. For once, however, they got into money difficulties when they tried to branch out into investments in America that didn't work out. So the British government stepped in to bail them out and passed the 1773 Regulating Act, which stated that the British government and the East India Company would rule India jointly.
Now, when planning your 16 marker, some teachers might ask you to divide your page into yes and no, so you're given both sides of the debate. Now, that's a perfectly good way of doing it, and it does get many students a lot of marks, and it does work. There's a slightly different way that I like to do it, and this encourages you to bring in other factors as well.
So once again, we're back to our exam question. Has economic resources been the main factor in the development of the British Empire? Explain your answer with reference to economic resources and other factors. Use a range of examples from across your study of migration, empire and the people, from circa 790 AD to the present day. And it's worth 16 marks plus 4 spag. Now underneath the question, we've got the pyramid, where I encourage my students to plan their answer. You may see that in the top pyramid, which represents the first paragraph, you are encouraged to actually discuss economic resources as the main factor. That's because this is the factor in the question, and we have to analyse and evaluate it at some point. We then need to decide whether economic factors are in fact the main reason. Now, in the process of doing that, what we need to do is that we need to consider other factors too. Now, we usually recommend that you discuss another 2 factors. Any more than that might be unnecessary. But those 2 factors that you discuss need to be analysed and evaluated in detail. Now, due to the content of this video today, especially looking at the likes of Robert Clive and Warren Hastings, we're going to go through the role of individual and discuss some ideas that you could potentially put in a paragraph for that factor. It doesn't mean that you have to talk about the role of individuals if you get this question. After all, it's not in the actual question. However, it's something that is relevant that you can bring in and that might get you some marks. In the middle of your pyramid plan, you will see that there is an opportunity to plan your conclusion or summary paragraph. This is where you have to make an overall decision as to which factor do you think was most important to developing the British Empire. Was it economic resources that is actually in the question, the role of individuals that we're going to discuss now, or a third factor that you would have chosen to bring in from that list of factors there on the right? So here's an example of a section of your 16 marker where you discuss the role of individuals. The role of individuals was also a prominent factor in the development of the British Empire. For example, people like Robert Clive and Warren Hastings played an important part in the colonisation of India. Clive had worked his way up through the East India Company, which had implemented trading ports around India. The company would go on to effectively rule India. It was so powerful that it even had its own army that was almost twice as big as the British army. Clive joined the company's army and proved to be a great leader of soldiers. He led his men to the victory in the Battle of Plassey in 1757, which suppressed any opposition from the Mughal Empire. The East India Army was vastly outnumbered with only 3,000 soldiers against an army of around 40,000 Mughal soldiers. The victory was partly down to Clive's tactic of divide and rule, where he managed to persuade native Indian Hindus to join with the British. The East India Company's dominance in India enabled the Regulating Act to be passed in 1773. This was a law that stated British government and the East India Company would rule India jointly. Warren Hastings became the first governor of India due to his reputation in Britain as a reformer. He had the experience of reorganising tax systems and tackling crime. During this time as governor, India was established as part of the British Empire. It was later considered to be the jewel in the crown.
Now, as you will remember from our plan, this is just a part of the question that we've tackled today. You will need at some point to discuss economic resources, as that is in the question, and you do obviously need to answer the question directly. I'm hoping to make another video later that may tackle the economic resources paragraph and other paragraphs too. I hope this video has been some help to you. In the meantime, stay safe and stay healthy.